On behalf of Global Best and our Global Alumni Network, welcome to this episode of Bain's Alumni Spotlight Series. We're thrilled to have you here with us today for this event, which is a part of our broader alumni speaker series highlighting the incredible achievements of Bain alumni from across the world. I'm Yaz Ketcherside, part of our global alumni team here at Bain & Company and the co-lead of our Boston Best Champions. For those who are unfamiliar with BEST, BEST is Bain's holistic approach to well-being, promoting ways to integrate well-being into the day-to-day of our experience to benefit our Bainies, the firm, and our clients. Mental health awareness is recognized across several geographies in May, and it's a great reminder to celebrate the progress we have made in destigmatizing mental health and fostering a culture of proactive support and resource availability. I'm excited about today's discussion with Dr. Modupe Akinola, a former Bainey who is passionately driving change in this area. Moderating our discussion today is Vanessa Williams, Senior Director of our Global Best team based in Boston. Vanessa began her journey with Bain in the Boston office as a summer associate in 2012, and then in 2016 transitioned her focus to talent management. Now Vanessa leads our Global Best team, delivering well-being resources, executive coaching, and trainings. We're fortunate to have you both with us today, and I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Vanessa to get us started.
Thanks, Yaz. I want to recognize Yaz, who had the idea to invite Modupe in 2023, and here we are today. Thank you, Yaz, for making this happen. Hi, everyone. As Yaz mentioned, May is Mental Health Awareness Month recognized by many of our offices. And for me, it's an opportunity to talk about mental health, what it means for us individually, and also how we collectively support one another. I know we're all excited to hear from Modupe, so let me go ahead and do her intro. Dr. Modupe Akinola started as an associate consultant in Boston, then subsequently took roles as a consultant and head of diversity. She went on to get her MBA, as well as her master's in social psychology and her PhD in organizational behavior. Over the last 15 years, Modupe has served as a professor at Columbia Business School, delving into the realms of stress, leadership, development, and DEI. Beyond her academic pursuits, Modupe is the host of the TED Business Podcast and was recently featured in an episode of Limitless with Chris Hemsworth on Disney+. We will touch on that more very shortly. Throughout this conversation, we're going to hear from Modupe, learn more from her experience and her expertise, including tips for managing stress. All right, Modupe, you ready to jump in?
I sure am.
Fantastic. I gave a very abbreviated intro, but want to hear more from you about your career journey, starting with your time at Bain.
Yes, it's always such a treat to spend time with Bainies because I realize Bain and Columbia have been my two main employers in my life. So you all hold such a special place in my heart. And here's the funny story. So when I graduated from college, there were two things that were my area of focus. One, I wanted to go back to West Africa, which is where my parents grew up, and start a nonprofit, the set of nurseries and literacy centers for poor kids. So right after college, I did that. However, my senior year, I had applied to HBS, and I did that equivalent of the 2+2 program type of thing back then in the ancient times. And so it was about having a couple of years of work experience, and then proceeding to go to business school. So I was like, do I want to spend a year or 2 or 3 in Ghana and then go to business school, or get business skills? And so I spent a year in Ghana and then was like, actually, I want to get more business skills to be aligned with my business school classmates. So when I was in Ghana, I sent a letter, a typed out letter to the recruiting folks, Jen Fulton, and I got a rejection letter saying that they were not going to give me an interview. So I was like, okay, screw that. I'm going to actually contact my friends from college who were at Bain. And so I contacted them, and they then passed on my information, and I got an interview. So that I share that story because it's all so much about your social networks. That was back then. It's even more so now. So then I ended up getting an interview, blah, blah, blah. Anil Srivastava, who is still a good friend, was one of my interviewers. Lisa Caputo. I'm sharing these names for the old school people who were out there so that you remember all those folks. And I ended up getting the job. And so I was in AC, loved it, did it for a couple of years, and then decided it was time for business school because I didn't know if I wanted to do nonprofit, do general management, be a lifetime consultant. Went to business school, came back to Bain, was in the golden years because we only had to do it 1 year before our debt was paid. And then realized, okay, I love this stuff. But the story I often tell is, I remember I was working on a really tough post-merger integration project with Jennifer Binder-LaPop, who's still there, who I love. And she said, I was thinking about this in the shower, and I think the company should blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you think about this work in the shower? You want to think about this work in the shower? You enjoy thinking about it in the shower? I don't. I don't want to think about it in the shower. I want a job, but it was an inspiration because I was like, I want a job that I want to think about in the shower all the time or think about outside of work. And I realized I had good relationships with my clients. I felt like I loved understanding the organizational dynamics at Bain. And then I felt like, well, maybe I should think about studying that scientifically. That's what ended up getting me to the PhD. But I have to share a couple of other things that are fantastic about Bain. When I was in that mode, I got an executive coach, Arlene Miller, and we did all these exercises. And I realized I just needed more work that had more meaning and more purpose for me. No offense, but I just felt like me making Fortune 500 companies richer was not what really drove me. And so I thought maybe it was more of the nonprofit stuff, or maybe it was something else. Did some work with Arlene that helped clarify that. And then I ended up doing what I call an externship at City Year because I thought it was about doing nonprofit stuff. And so Bain allowed me the flexibility to kind of try that out. Did that, didn't love it. And that's when I started doing more of the exploration of the academic path. And the final thing about that is, as I was leaving Bain, I had done a lot to increase diversity at Bain. I loved the firm so much that I did everything I could. I was like half staffed on consultant recruiting, AC recruiting, summer associate stuff. And as I was leaving, they were kind of like, will you still do some of that while you get your PhD? And I agreed, which is how I then became the head of diversity. So I did that for 4 years while I was getting my PhD. So I still worked at Bain while I was getting my PhD. And then once I was doing my dissertation, I decided, I need to really focus and get a job. So I have a very long history with Bain, which is why that was a long answer to your short question, but it's also why the company means so much to me.
Thank you. I think you took that question, you made it even better because you highlighted the work that needs to go into this. You're gonna persevere to get that interview, and then the path isn't linear as much as maybe we think that's what we want. How much value there is from being curious, being like, that's what you like, but that's not what I like, and that's okay. Let me go figure it out.
That just the journey, because I know there's some people on here who are trying to figure out the journey. And what I was able to do was say, what do I love about Bain? I love an apprenticeship business where I'm working with super smart people learning to get better. I love solving problems and answering questions. I just wanted those questions to be different types of questions. And so do a diagnosis of what are some of the things. I love working in teams, absolutely adore it. What are some of the things you love about the environment? And if you can replicate that in your next environment, you'll find joy.
Yeah. And meaning. I heard for you, meaning is really important. Is that meaning's not hiding under a rock. I can make meaning out of this experience when I know what matters to me.
Yes.
There's a reunion happening in the chat, so just want you to appreciate that as well.
I see it. Paul Chahaki. Yes. Okay. So much. Love all of you. Seriously.
So Modupe, you kind of previewed how you got into higher education, but yeah, tell us more about that journey and the fact that as a stress researcher, you're based at a business school and why there's a business imperative there.
Yes. So when I applied, I decided to apply to business school. I talked to a business school for my PhD. I talked to my leadership professors. I talked to a bunch of different people. And I felt like when I applied, my application essays were about two things. One was, why do critical topics like diversity fall off the radar screen? When I got to Bain in 1997, I wish it was, yes. Shout out to the seasoned people in there. When I got there in 97, there were 30 Black people in what we call BAPS, Blacks at Bain. when I returned after business school, there were 7 and I was the second most senior. And I knew that Bain had done a ton around diversity and cared about it. So my application essay was about how does diversity fall off the radar screen and what do we need to do to change things. I also did my application also talked about how you make nonprofits stronger. Now, because I talked about the diversity thing, I got an email from an incoming professor at Harvard. I applied to a bunch of schools, was actually not planning to go to Harvard for my PhD because I was like, I've done all my education there. But I got an email from Wendy Mendez, who was an incoming assistant professor who studies diversity, but also studies it from the angle of stress and physiology. And so she contacted me and she was like, I would love for you to come here. We can study these topics, but look at it from a different angle. And I loved the idea of studying the body and the mind and their interaction and how they affect outcomes like diversity, how being in the numerical minority can influence your stress response and how you experience different environments. So I was like, I'm in. And a message of that is, and that one of the things I also loved about Bain is your mentors are critical. She became a mentor to me. She guided me through the process. My journey has been driven by having the best mentors out there and developing those relationships. And so, she studied stress. I started studying stress, and that's how this became a topic of interest. And, part of my study of stress came from Bain because I felt like all along the social hierarchy, whether it was a partner, an associate consultant, people in administrative areas, everyone was stressed. So it wasn't like there were people who were immune from it. There was something about the environment that was stressful, but it wasn't always negative. That you could see, I knew myself, I thrived under the stress. Sometimes I might buckle under it, but most of the times we were thriving under that stress. So that dominant narrative that like stress is bad for you didn't resonate with my lived experience at Bain, my lived experience in college, my lived experience in K through 12. And so that is what got me studying stress in grad school and subsequently studying stress and DEI and many other topics as an academic.
And it's these connections that you made. And we talk about when we train stress internally with BEST, we talk about there's a healthy level of stress that actually helps you to perform, helps you to be more like getting ready to facilitate this session, increases your energy. And then at a point though, when it converts from acute to chronic, you start to see some of the negative impacts of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how can we balance that in an appropriate way? That is the key.
Yeah. Good. Okay, let's talk stress. I promised we'd come back to the Limitless episode with Chris Hemsworth, and so I enjoyed watching that in prep for this. That was a very fun part of my prep. Tell us more about the experience of working with Chris, helping him to better address his stress.
Yeah, well, so the first thing is I got a random email from a production company before COVID asking me if I would talk to them about stress and that they were thinking of a show that would entail dealing with a star who has some stress that they're experiencing. So I was like, cool, yeah, I can talk about what I would do to stress somebody out based on my experience. And so we talked about some of those things, and then time went on and I kept on advising them on what they would do. Then the pandemic hit. And so I was like, oh, that's not happening. And then in May of 2021, they reached out to me again. They said, hey, all those tips that we were talking about, we would love you to be the stress coach of Chris Hemsworth, stressing him out in the way we discussed, and also, spending time trying to help him with his stress. So I was kind of like, I'm in. I'll do it. And so that's what started Limitless. And in it, thank you for watching, first of all. I give him some tips and tools that I'm actually going to share some of them with you now so that you can get the stress coach experience similar to a little different because I'm not putting you all through the feats and tasks that I put Chris through, but a different angle of that. So maybe it makes sense for me right now to kind of launch into how I think about stress and how that episode gives you insight into stress. So this thing called stress, I mean, when I talk about stress, I always like to define it so that we're on the same page about what it is. So you can think about stress as a situation where there are some constraints that you're facing, but there are also some opportunities. And these constraints and opportunities are related to something you want that's important, but there's also some uncertainty around it. So that's one definition. But another definition that I find is the easiest is to think about stress as a situation or a context where the demands exceed your resources to cope. So where there's some danger or some uncertainty or some effort that you need to put in, that's, one aspect of a demand. But you can overcome that by having some resources, the knowledge, the ability, sometimes even the disposition to help you get through it. So that's a working definition of stress. And because stress is so person specific, the way you deal with stress is by basically understanding yourself and your relationship with stress. So I'm going to make this a little interactive by asking you, what are some of the interpersonal stressors, job-related stressors, work family stressors you face regularly? How have they affected you, and how have you tried to manage them? Because if you don't think about it for yourself, you're not going to be able to figure out the tools to address it. And so specifically, I want you to put in the chat. So we will play with the chat. I already saw somebody said teenagers. I'll add teenagers and seniors. Some of you are probably dealing with seniors, your parents too. Those are stressful. What are some aging parents? Exactly. I call them teenagers. Fundraising at a startup. Brad, hey, Brad. So yes, sandwich generation, keep putting those up. Your career 3.0 when you're thinking of transitioning. But in addition to that, I want you to indicate also what are some of your emotional reactions, your behavioral reactions, your physiological reactions. Put them in that the chat. So I see fear of conflict. I see college for your teenagers, which is stressful. You're one of your behavioral reactions is you avoid it. It affects your performance in some ways, or maybe, hey, Mark, one of my former students, performance is a stressor. Your pulse rate increases, your heart rate increases, your like breathing gets different. What else? Put some more up on there. Was that Liz Ramos? Liz Ramos, we worked together when I was the head of diversity. Oh my gosh, this is making me so happy. Exhaustion. So, and people, insomnia, you can't sleep. You constantly need to prioritize and triage things. Brain food. Okay, food. Someone put food. What are some of the foods you go to? I want to see some of those. Mine are gummy bears. Love hearing you too, Liz. Mine are gummy bears. What are some of your vices? Sugar. Kate, hi, Kate. Sugar, chocolate. I know someone's about to put the wine, all carbs. You go for the carbs. Wine, coffee, cookies, Doritos, then you get the headaches, all that good stuff. Yes, these are our reactions. You need to, ice cream, you need to know these. Because if you don't, and I call this dating your stress, this is your opportunity to date your stress. Someone put short temper. And if you had a moment where you're not sure what your reactions or your answers to these things are, ask one of your family members. Your teenagers will certainly tell you he or she gets snippy. I don't want to be around them. They eat this, that, or the other thing. They yell at us more. They're avoidant. Date your stress. So yes, some of the sources of stress you guys mentioned were, there are lots of initiatives, time, limited resources. You need to make progress, change. COVID is coming back. It's still around. All of these things are sources of stress at work. But then there are also sources of stress in life. Aging parents, someone mentioned, health issues, your relationships, your marriage, your children, managing that work-life trade-off, all of this, someone put because of the wine. Hi, Chris. These are some of the different experiences we have with stress. And so what happens when we're having these experiences, our stress response is evolutionarily based. So that when there's a real life-threatening situation, like a lion is following you on a safari or whatever, you get increases in your sympathetic adrenomedullary system. So you get the adrenaline, you get the dopamine, you get the energy to fight or flee. You also get the cortisol, the stress hormone that is needed to give you what you need to rise to the occasion. But I said this evolutionarily based behavior is focused on real life threatening situations. Well, what's happening now is we're having the same response, but to all of those stressors you mentioned, to inflation, to the stock market declines, and that's having a negative effect on us. So what happens when we have that type of stress response? It affects our performance and productivity. It hijacks our rational mind. We are prepared to act physically, but not mentally. You make worse decisions. It affects your risk taking. Your memory is impaired. You forget key things. So the stress that we're experiencing affects our performance. It also affects our health and vitality. When your heart rate is constantly up, when that cortisol level is high, it affects our cardiovascular system, increases in blood pressure, heart disease, stroke. It increases our tendencies. We are less able to recover. We have sleep problems, digestive problems. It suppresses our immune system, so we get cellular aging, which can lead to cellular replication, cancer, all those bad things. So stress is making us sick. In addition to that, it affects our learning and growth. We have this tunnel vision, this focus on the negative. It shortens our temper. Yeah, you wrote, some of you, irritability. It can lead to depression. So it inhibits our learning and growth. So what do we need to do? We need to avoid our stress with time management and prioritization, reduce our stress with relaxation techniques, and counteract it by building healthy habits. We know to do this, but we forget to do this. So I'm going to give you a few tips in each of these areas. Next time you're stressed, I want you to avoid it with time management and prioritization. This is not rocket science, but what I want you to do is list all the things you have on your to-do list. I want you to categorize them. You know, a 2x2, you know, a good 2x2 at Bain, by urgent and important. Put those different to-dos in these quadrants. You want more of them in quadrant 2, where you're focusing on the not urgent but important things, instead of being like a magpie and being distracted by the shiny, urgent things that don't matter or aren't as important. So that's one of the things I want you to do next time you're stressed. List, categorize, and then prioritize. One of the things I also want you to do is relax more. There are so many tech-mediated ways for you to slow down your system, slow down your heart rate, be in the present. There are apps like the 10% Happier app. I have a stress module on that if you're interested in figuring out how to better address your stress. There's Headspace. There are different types of meditation to slow your mind down. When you are in a stressful state, you need to do anything you can to just breathe. Then there's movement and activity. Is there yoga you can do? Is there standing up, walking around, taking those calls while you're walking? And then there's also things like the Aura Ring that will tell you how much sleep you don't get, that will nudge you when you need to get more. Your Apple Watch that might tell you what you need to do, how you need to stand. We have technology, let's use it to our benefit. But then I also want you to counteract stress by building healthy habits. I want you to evaluate yourself in terms of your exercise, your sleep, your diet, doing things you enjoy. Where do you found yourself in each of these columns, on each of these dimensions? And most important, what is one thing you can do this week to change this? If it's exercise, can you commit to doing something differently? Maybe a great tip that I heard from somebody was, no, they don't get a chance to walk outdoors that much, but their goal for themselves was to walk around the house a couple of times for 5 minutes as their exercise. Then that went to walking around the block. Then that went to walking maybe half a mile. Small steps, if you diagnose where you stand in each of these columns and make the little steps. Someone said they need more enjoyment. And I see here maybe a painting or coloring session. I want you to take that one step further. Today, I want you to Google whatever a painting or coloring session might be in your area, or go to Amazon and buy a coloring book. And then promise that in this week, you will draw inside the lines. Golfing, don't just put it out there as something you will do. Make an intention, do something intentional to get you there. So that's one aspect of stress that I want you to think about. But I want you to remember this. Yes, you know all the stuff I just told you. You're like, yeah, I just said on this webinar, and I know all this stuff. So do the stuff you already know, but I want to take it up a notch, which is there are actually 2 truths of stress, which I mentioned earlier. Yes, stress can be deteriorating, and I shared the ways it can be deteriorating, but we have all thrived under stress. So I like to think about and remind people of the stress mindset, the idea that there's not just one side of stress, there are 2 sides of stress. And I want you to remember that stress in and of itself isn't harmful or helpful. It's your mindset about stress that influences your response. What do I mean by that? And what's a mindset? It's the lens or frame of mind through which we view the world. We get so much information coming through to our minds, and we filter it using our mindset. And so our mindset has a powerful effect on how we experience things. And we know this from placebo effects. Those were the first introductions showing us that mindset matters. That when you give half of the patients a sugar pill, half of them the real drug, there are beneficial results that come out of just having the sugar pill. Or in another study, they gave people fake poison ivy, had them rub it on their hands, and guess what? They developed rashes. Your mindset can influence your somatic responses. This other one, there were some folks who had torn meniscus, knee-related issues. They engaged in a sham knee operation. They had a surgeon just do an incision, then sutured it, and then off they went. Even though it was a sham surgery or procedure, people reported having reduced swelling in their knee, feeling much better. Power of mindsets. Now, what happens when we change Wall Street bankers' mindsets about stress? My collaborator gave them a stress is deteriorating information, kind of similar to what I just shared with you, showed them a video about that, and then showed them a video that showed all the enhancing properties of stress, and then tracked their mood and performance over time. And what did they find? That those who saw that video about stress being enhancing had fewer negative mood and anxiety symptoms and performed better at work relative to those with the stress is debilitating mindset. And then in some of my research, I found that when people have a stress enhancing mindset, they're more creative than those that have a debilitating mindset. That when students, we did this with MIT students, we exposed them to this whole, what I'm telling you now about stress being enhancing, and they had more positive mood during exams, and they performed better in their exams when they had a stress is enhancing mindset. And then I've told people and reminded them before a negotiation, for instance, that a little bit of stress is good for you. It's your body preparing for action. And those with the stress is enhancing mindset who then experience more increases in cortisol during the negotiation perform better in the negotiation. And then stress can help you when you're dealing with threat-related decision making because it increases your focus. So what can we do to rethink our stress and to continually exhibit or remember the stress is enhancing mindset? One thing we need to do is acknowledge our stress. How many of you, when you've told someone you're stressed, got the response, oh, don't worry about it, you're going to be okay? That's not acknowledging your stress. That's denying it. So when you're feeling stress, I want you to acknowledge it. I want you to acknowledge those emotional, behavioral, and physiological reactions, period, and acknowledge them without judgment. So when you're going for the chips, just remind yourself, wait a minute, I'm going for the chips, or I'm drinking a lot of wine, or I'm being really irritable. What is going on here? I must be stressed, because we're so good at pushing through it that we sometimes don't even notice. And if you can notice and acknowledge, then you can interrupt that stress. That is what I'm talking about when I say acknowledge that stress. It is what it is. What I also want you to do is to welcome it. Typically, we're stressed because there's something that we care about. There's something we care about. And so we need to welcome it because it's a good thing. It's aligned with something we care about. So for a moment right now, I want you to think about a recurring stressor that you want to change your reaction or your behavior to. So I'm stressed about so-and-so because I care about what? So you're stressed about your client presentation. I'm going to just take you babies right now. I'm sure some of you have an upcoming client presentation that you're stressed about. And you know that you've typically nailed your client presentations, but all the time, anytime it's time for the client presentation or the presentation before the pre-wire, look at me, my Bain lingo, or the pre-wire gets you all stressed. And you've had these tons and tons of times, but you still have that terrible negative reaction. What is the underlying reason why you care? What do you care about? And I'm going to model this for you. I call it kind of the 5 why exercise. I used to always be stressed right before I taught. And I do great in my teaching. I love teaching, whatever, but I'd be stressed and I'd be that obnoxious person in my household. My partner would be like, why do you have to be like this each time? And I'm like, because I'm teaching and it's intensive and why can't you just travel? Yeah, those were my reactions, my behaviors and all that. I'm stressed about teaching because I care about what? I'm stressed because I want to do in the classroom. Why? Because I want to be able to make sure that my students absorb what I have to say. Why? Because I'm teaching future business leaders in the world and I want them to be better than the leaders before them. Why? Because I know that they have such potential in them. And if they're great and if they absorb what I'm teaching them about leadership, then they will be able to change the world by addressing that question that they were uniquely designed to fix in that world. Why does it matter? Because this world is messed up and we really need smart, bright people to tackle those problems, and smart, bright leaders who know how to not project their stress on others, but help people rise to the occasion. So when I go through that exercise, it's not I'm stressed because of my teaching meetings. I'm stressed because I care about this world being a better place. And that changes my relationship with teaching. So I want you to do the same thing next time there's something you're stressed about. And the final step to rethinking your stress is to remember that the stress response that I told you about earlier, it was designed to help us. So you need to think about what actions can I take to channel my stress towards my goal? What can I do differently? Well, maybe that 5 why exercise that I just did is something you can do differently. Also think about what are the possibilities and learnings and growth that you will get. Some of you might be dealing with some real stressor, like a parent being sick, a child being sick, and it's a chronic stressor. Well, one of the things you might learn from that, or that you have learned, is your resilience, your ability to push through, your ability to like show love to others in a tough situation. So think about what are the possibilities that are inherent in this stress. And then I want you to think about is what is an important change you can make. Maybe you can say, you know what, when I want the gummy bears, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to have a mantra for myself that says, you know, this too shall pass, or I'm being the best that I can. I'm not sure what it is for you, but make an important change. Sometimes that change can be as simple as me telling my partner that they needed to travel or go away for work while I was teaching. It could be something like that. But whatever it is, remember, it's in your control to do something about it. So, a couple of things to take away. Stress can be enhancing. Your mindset is an important factor. And if you acknowledge, welcome, and utilize your stress, you'll be happier, healthier, and more productive. And yes, if you want to learn more and additional tools, check out Limitless with Chris Hemsworth. And with that, I will stop and I will open it up back to more questions and thoughts from Vanessa. But I hope you got something out of that.
Modupe, thank you. I could see so many reactions. I think light bulbs going off for people, and I'm sure we're gonna take it all in. Um, I I do have a couple follow-up questions, and one about mindsets. And I think what you get to in a lot of your strategies is this positive kernel, or there's
Yes.
there's somewhere to find the positive. And I've heard Benny say, but me being hard on myself, me being negative and self-critical, is what makes me do better. So where is there room for the positivity? How would you address that?
I love that because I used to say that to myself, but that is perpetuating a negative cycle. It's a positive self-talk is a great thing. We are so hard on ourselves and we need to just get better about saying positive things. I mean, yes, you might think that you thrive by being like, I suck at this and I love being able to push through. But can you flip that and say, I'm great at a challenge, or I enjoy challenging myself and I'm going to push myself a little bit harder because I know when I do that, I'm at my best. I just think that transforming it is just puts more positive energy in the air, and it I think has a better benefit for you psychologically than the negative talk. And there is research on that. So I would implore you to try both and see the benefits that can come from the more positive side. We beat
Yes.
ourselves up too much.
Yeah, thank you. It's not that it's wrong, but try something else and see what you
Yeah.
get from it.
Yeah.
Um, there's another thread in the chat, and this is, I guess, stress in relation to others. And I've heard this as well as people leaders. How can you be a stress absorber versus a stress amplifier? So I want to talk expectations. Is my role to absorb stress, or is my role to help people also their stress?
I think about it as my role is to be present with the stress that is around me and to understand that sometimes I don't have to do anything, but I just need to be with it. What often happens, often as a leader, and also you also absorb your leader stress. Sometimes I'll have to say, um, I feel energy right now that is a weird energy. Can we pause and just like breathe and just acknowledge that? And that changes the dynamic because sometimes someone doesn't even realize they're bringing in that energy because they've never learned to be present with their stress. Because I can feel it and I can say, wait, let's let's change this. And you can do that to more senior people too. I have done that to senior leaders and been like, this energy isn't working for me right now. And that changes the dynamic. So that is something I think as leaders, we need to learn and notice for ourselves. So that's why I said it's dating your own stress. When you're feeling that energy, pause yourself. The worst thing a leader can do is to subject those that are there with to that stress that they're experiencing. And so I think more people need to do and engage in those tips that I just mentioned. And someone said, how do you differentiate or separate individual versus group stress? There's stress contagion, and that's what we don't want. It to have these spillover effects so that we're all in this negative state because you didn't take out a minute, leader, to check your own self. And I also find that when we acknowledge the stress collectively, that's when the team gels even more and can be better off for it. But that doesn't mean you have to say, oh, we have to ignore that this stress is going on or pretend that it's not there. But instead, maybe saying something like, hey, this is going to be a really stressful period for all of us. What does each of us need? What do you need? That is also the biggest question to ask yourself and others. What do I need right now? Sometimes I need to not be hard on myself. Sometimes I need help from somebody else. Sometimes I need you to tell me to take a nap. So maybe if people do an inventory when they're all feeling stressed in a group and say, what does each person need this week to help us get through it? That is what we need to do in our team context. And that is what we need to push ourselves as leaders and push our leaders to do more of.
I mean, it comes back to acknowledge it. We're not gonna get to ignore it because it's gonna keep coming back. And you mentioned being present, and in a way that's non-judgmental. I get it logically. It's hard. Why is it hard to be present with our stress?
Because we have so many distractions. And it's so much easier to ignore what's in us. I mean, this is just the basics of any therapy. And so I believe in therapy. I believe in executive coaching. I believe in all of it. We've been taught to run away from everything. Remember when you were a kid and you fell and your mom would be like, don't cry. It's okay. It's not hurting. You're bleeding. It hurts. So this idea of denying everything and pushing and stuffing it down is something we've been taught to do since we were children. So that's why I say let's be present with it and just acknowledge that it exists. And if we do that more and maybe get outside help to help us, that is going to be important. And I am an emotion suppressor. So I start some of the work that they say research is research. I study stress because I've been studying stress my whole life. And I just push through everything. And so learning to say, oh no, wow, I'm feeling sad right now. I'm feeling anxious right now. Is something I've had to teach myself to do. And so that's why it's so hard to be present with our stress. But the better we get at, acknowledging and understanding where it is, the better people we will be, and the healthier we'll be. Because suppression, again, leads to all those negatives I mentioned health-wise. I see a question in the chat about how do we know if we're burnt out and not stressed? I like to think, so burnout is really the kind of the mental and physical and emotional exhaustion. So when you are feeling, and those are bodily responses that are aligned with stress. So this is just kind of terminology in some ways, that the burnout is part of the physiological response to a stressor. So you can think of them as intertwined.
You're right. Lots of questions coming in on the Q&A. Maybe one more prepared question and then our rapid fire, and then we'll go to Q&A. But we've been talking about the individual, we've been talking about the team. Why is this important for companies to pay attention to and encourage the positive behaviors that we've described?
Well, one reason is that our workplaces are not getting less stressful. They're getting more and more stressful. You can't turn off. You have social media and this, that, and the other. Your clients can reach you at any point. You cannot turn off work. So it's becoming an all-encompassing thing. And so if our organizations don't get better at teaching us how to have boundaries, at teaching us how to take the time we need and giving us the tools to do many of the things that I mentioned, then we're not going to be able to be at our best and solving the critical problems that we're here to solve in our organizations. So I think it's incumbent on our organizations to not just teach us how to do the work, but teach us how to be the work and teach us how to be the people we need to be to thrive in this society that is not allowing us to turn off. And so that's why I think the work that you're doing with BEST, the focus on mental health, the focus on addressing things like stress and giving people resources are key. But I have to say, organizations are doing a lot of this, but as employees, we're not taking advantage of it. So can you all please, who are on there, do and take advantage of some of the resources that are being offered? Because if not, companies are going to stop offering them. And that's what we don't want. We want to be agents and have agency using what we need. And also, I would suggest recommending even more things that are helping you to your companies to be able to give them more breadth in terms of what to give and offer.
I love the call to action. Thank you, because we all benefit. We benefit individually, we benefit collectively. It has to be and. It can't be on the individual, it can't be on the company. It's about together. And it comes back to your question, what do you need? When you think about what you need, and if it's not here at Bain, let us know. We'll see what we can do. Uh, we're going to wrap up our fireside chat portion with rapid fire Q&A, which is our customary as part of our alumni conversations. And then Modupe will go into some of the submitted questions. How's that sound?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rapid fire questions. What is your favorite book?
I think that's a tough one because there are too many. But I'll tell you the genre. I love memoirs. I'm a social psychologist at heart, so I love reading like Andre Agassi's memoir, Sotomayor. LeBron James's was my most recent. Anything that tells me about a person's life and their journey and how they pushed through, it just brings me joy. So I would suggest any of those, and there are tons of good ones. And I also run. Running is one of my stress relievers. So audiobooks, so listening to those on audiobook, oh, it's so good.
So do you also do podcast? And if so, do you have a go-to podcast?
TED Business, of course, my own. No, but I love A Slight Change of Plans. I also listen to Choiceology, one of my collaborators, Katie Milkman. If you're about change and wanting to change your behaviors and what it looks like to, Katie Milkman's is a great one. And I also love TED, all of the TED. TED Talks and things like that are things I listen to.
All right, switching to music. Go to karaoke song.
So that depends on who I'm doing karaoke with. So I have a large family. My two sisters, and over the summer we all go to. We spend 2 weeks together. 13 of us, so parents, spouses, kids, all that. And so if I'm doing karaoke with my sisters, Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody is a good one. With my nieces, Beat It. My little niece who's 4 loves Beat It, Michael Jackson. So those are a few. Lord, Royals, my sisters and I like to harmonize. So those are some songs. Love karaoke. Work colleagues, Rihanna's Work, 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 Work. It feels very appropriate for the work I do. Yeah.
I feel like there's a Spotify playlist in the making. In the coming month, so let's say June, coming ahead in June, what are you most excited about?
Okay, so my gift to my nieces and nephew when they graduate from college is a trip anywhere around the world where I haven't been. My nephew, who's the first, he is graduating in 2 weeks, and we are taking a trip to Uganda. We're going to go for 2 weeks and we are going to do safari and see the gorillas. And I am so excited for that. June 16th.
How special for the both of you. Wow. Very exciting. All right, last rapid fire question. What's the best advice that you've ever been given?
I think I'll share a mantra that,
Mhm.
or a phrase that and it was the phrase that actually helped me to take the leap to leave Bain and do academia. And a friend said, the courageous are those who are fearful, but go anyway. And so I was like, okay. And so that's one that in any aspect of my life where I'm like, I'm afraid, again, an emotion that's associated with stress, or I'm nervous, I'm like, okay, that means that I need to figure out what I need to be courageous about, because it just takes courage. And when you can move past those fears, the whole world can open up to you. And I've seen that time and time again. So that's the best mantra that I keep with me.
Thank you. And now, knowing more of your story, I see it. I see it coming out in your story. So next time you need a memoir, I mean, if you want to write your memoir, there's a lot to work in there.
Absolutely. Oh, the book, I am fearful of that. So, maybe I need to be courageous. I'm working through that. I'm sitting with that and being present with that.
Okay. Thank you, Modupe. So hopefully between rapid fire and all the great tips on stress, I'm seeing a lot of questions come through the Q&A. So um, let me start, Modupe, with one about coming back to mindset
Yeah.
and what might get in our way. The mindset that it's never good enough.
You know, I feel like that issue is the human condition, that it is never good enough and we are not enough. That is what we all struggle with. I interviewed Melinda Gates a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her what is something that she continues to tell her kids as they grow up, or what's an insight that she thinks that all kids need to know. And she said that you're enough. And, I would say that some of my therapy work that I've done, has gone back to like are you enough? Reminding yourself you're enough. So no, there's always going to be more. There's always going to be something better. There's always going to be this, that, the other thing. But if you can tell yourself, this is enough, I am enough, then you're at your best. Otherwise, you'll continue spinning those wheels. So come up with a mantra, come up with something that tells you this is enough, you are enough. And my new one that I've added to my life is, may I meet this too with kindness, because I'm so hard on myself saying nothing is enough, that I need to be kinder and more loving to myself. So it's like, okay, I didn't get to prep this long enough, but this is the best that I can give, and may I meet this with kindness. So I'll pass that on to whoever asked that question, and to anyone who's in that similar situation, which means that if you were at Bain, and if you had any time at Bain, you are an overachiever, type A, can't turn things off, and you need to remind yourself that to be kind to yourself and you're enough.
And that also has an effect. You talked about stress contagion. When I'm kind to myself, it's easier for me to be kind to others. I mean, I see this at home, I see this at work. True.
And also, I'll have to add, when you don't think you're enough, then you're going to want more. And it's about an accumulate. And happiness is about when what you have exceeds what you want. And so that enough mindset says, like, I have everything I need. And if you know that for sure, and if you feel that in your heart, then you'll be happy, because you're not always striving for things in that want bucket.
Hmm. You mentioned a profile of being high achievers. What do we care about? We care about doing well. So then where's the line between, is it the job, is it work that's stressful, or is it me that needs to better manage stress? I feel like it gets blurry.
Welcome to my world. I have accepted it's me. Like, the only person I have control over is me. So if it's work, then I need to be able to examine my relationship with that work and whoever is creating that. And sometimes it's me. If there's an external person or situation, then you need to have a conversation with your manager, with your leader, and say, wait, it feels like this is a lot. How can we work better, or fix this, or work on this together? I'm going to give you an example. Oh my gosh, I remember I was on a case. It was a healthcare case. I'm forgetting the name of the manager, but he had just come out of private equity, out of PEG. And I was like a general practice person. And, it was just, I would go to every meeting and I would almost want to cry because he was like, it was like rapid fire, and the context and the work was not working for me. And so I came to him after. I was like, this is not working. You came out of PEG. I'm a general practice person. I need some time to sit and think. And he was like, thank you. I appreciate that. Why don't we schedule our meetings in a different way? And yes, there will be some rapid fire meetings. Sometimes there might be, but thank you for sharing that. And guess what I learned from this? That I am in the general practice now, and I need to be thoughtful about that. So he learned and I learned, and it came from having a conversation, me stepping back and saying, nah, this isn't going to work. And I'm not going to bring my best work product to you. So sometimes we have to have a conversation with those who are giving us our work, and then a conversation with ourselves about our relationship with our work. I have problems saying no. I say yes. I have a no club. They tell me things to say no to, but I say yes to too many things because I'm at a phase in my life where I get amazing opportunities. But it's me. I need to say no. I'm creating it for myself. And so, yeah, working on both. And I've accepted, I'm trying not to accept that a lot of it is me. And I don't want to live a life like this for my whole life. So therapy.
We have call in the chat to form a no club. We have so many extra 10s at Bain. I think we add one more. So we talked about showing ourselves kindness, accessing kindness within ourselves. What about when it comes to others and wanting to nudge them to be able to see the positive? What are your tips when it comes to that?
So another one of my favorite questions that's aligned with what do you need is, what do you need from me as a friend right now? And I often will ask this of my friends, of my siblings, of my partner, whatever. Who do you need me to be? Sometimes if someone's in a negative state, they need you to be the one that's like, yes, this job is bad. This is bad. Everything is, go down that with them. Sometimes they need you to be the positive person. Sometimes they need you to just give them a hug and say nothing and just let them cry. So I think if you ask somebody and force them to pause, they will tell you what they need. And sometimes that negativity, that negative person needs you to be negative first and then be positive. But I do like to, but sometimes reframe things. As you can see, I'm a very optimistic person. And I think it can shut down the negative people when I'm trying to tell them to be positive and see the bright side out of things. So sometimes I need to go where they are and then take it up to the positive side. So that would be my suggestions. Ask someone what they think they need, forcing them to pause and answer the question for themselves, and then give them what they need, and then put the cherry on top of the positive if you're not getting to that place.
Yeah. We talk about meeting people where they are, and I'm not a mind reader. I'm not going to know. So why don't I ask?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I will acknowledge that we have 5 minutes to go and will not get to every question. So I apologize for those who submitted. Let me, as I quick scan, Modupe, can you say more about your expertise in research and DEI and some of the trends you've seen about how stress differentially impacts underrepresented folks in particular spaces like academia, professional settings, and any success trends to make it better?
So one of the things that started my DEI related work was that we had so many amazing people of color at Bain. And then every now and then it would be like, oh, they're leaving. Oh, and I didn't know why. And for some people, like being in context where you are in the numerical minority was new. They didn't have that type of experience in college. My life from 5 until I've been one of a handful of people of color in any environment. The, raisin in the oatmeal, the whatever, the chocolate chip and the chocolate chip cookie. So I was used to those environments. So I could thrive because I've been doing that since I was 5. Other people are not and haven't had that experience. So this emphasis on belonging and inclusion and making sure that you're getting to know people who are different from you in the same way as you would get to know someone who's the same, or using more of the taking more time to get to know people who are different, and not just focusing on, oh, what do we have in common? We went to this school, no, focusing on what makes them different. When we typically meet a person, we try to focus on the commonalities, but there's research that shows that understanding differences and what different people are bringing to the table is what really helps you get the best out of diversity. So, we know exactly what we need to do to make our environments more welcoming for people who are different from us, is do the same thing that you do with people who look the same as you. But we just have these barriers that we all need to be better at addressing. You know what it took to make you thrive. You had great mentors who asked you good questions, who knew your background, who knows your family, who, like, we know individually what it took. So we need to do the same things that we do for people who look like us with people who don't. It's not rocket science. And so that's what I say in every environment I'm in. It is not rocket science. And so, yeah, they say that, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, but we also need to add like, and letting someone else choose the music. Understanding what different music, what karaoke they are singing to, what books they're reading. That is where you get that inclusion and belonging. And I honestly felt that throughout my experience at Bain, but I don't know if all of the people of color who were there felt that. But again, it was natural for me because it was aligned with the environments I was in.
Modupe, thank you. This was a pleasure to get to hear from you, to get to see how everyone engaged. I don't know that I have a successful way to wrap this up, but apart from saying there was so much that I'm taking away, and my steer to everyone would be, please go do one thing. Maybe it's starting with what do you need, and see where that takes you.
And thank you for everyone tuning in, Giselle and Liz and all these. This has like made my day and brought me so much joy. And Bain is an incredible place. I wouldn't be who I am without my experience at Bain and without my amazing mentors, many of whom are still there. So thank you for all that you brought to my life. It means a lot. And thank you for this opportunity.